At midnight on June 24, 2021, America fell into an eerie silence. The starry sky in Florida blended with the full moon shining directly onto the Trampoline Tower South building. The peace was created by the residents in the building who were fast asleep. But they had no idea that this sleep would last forever. In just a few short seconds, 98 people would never wake up again. While the lucky survivors had to carry the trauma for the rest of their lives. America experienced a sleepless night, to the extent that then President Joe Biden had to declare a state of emergency from the lighthouse. So what really happened on that fateful night? Welcome to Condo TV, where we report on the shocking collapse of the 12-story condominium that shook America. That's video content, done. To support the production team in creating more quality content. And now, let's get started right away. On June 24, 2021, in Surfside Town, Miami City, Florida, USA. Sarah Neer, a resident living here, had just finished showering and was relaxing on her beloved bed in her apartment. It was 12:50 a.m., and Sarah began to hear strange noises coming from the hallway. The sound kept repeating, as if someone was knocking on something. The noise made Sarah unable to sleep, so she decided to leave her room and go down to the first floor to meet a security guard, to ask if anyone was doing renovations at night. The night shift security guard was Desert Foreman, although he also heard the strange noise. He was certain that no one was doing house repairs at this time. Both were in the lobby of the Champlain Tower South condominium, a coastal complex with 3 towers, a swimming pool, and other facilities. Each tower was 12 stories high with a total of 136 apartments, built in the 1980s. The first floor, where Sarah and Foreman were standing, was the main lobby. The basement was the parking lot, and from the 2nd to the 12th floors were the apartment area. Although old, the building had never experienced any serious issues before. However, this time things didn't seem so simple. The thumping sound continued to echo in the lobby, even becoming more rapid. But neither of them could determine where it was coming from or what was making the noise. Foreman guessed that perhaps the elevator was stuck, but at that moment, both fell silent. They felt the entire building shaking. Next, an unbelievable scene unfolded before their eyes. The entire area outside the main lobby had disappeared. At 1:16 a.m., the Eastern Miami area police received an emergency 911 call from Foreman. On the phone, he panically spoke fragmented words that seemed nonsensical. Police and rescue? Emergency? Yes, it's a big explosion at 8777. 8777, hurry up. Initially, the dispatch operator thought this was a malicious prank. But just a few minutes later, a series of other calls poured in with various descriptions of the incident. It was an earthquake, a fire, and some even said they saw fighter jets appearing nearby. All the information provided pointed to only one location. Champlain Tower South condominium at 8777 Collins Avenue. Very quickly, at 1:20 a.m., less than 5 minutes after Foreman's call, police units were on the scene. From a distance, they saw thick dust covering the entire street. When they looked toward the building, the sight before them was something no one could believe. 2/3 of the Champlain Tower South building had completely collapsed. The police officers present at the scene were all stunned. They didn't even know what to do, other than hurriedly reporting to their superiors. The Champlain Towers building has collapsed. The rear part of the building has collapsed. Rescue teams had just arrived at the scene, but they were just as stunned as the police. The north and east buildings of the condominium complex along with the pool area had completely collapsed. Only the west building remained standing. The pile of rubble sat on top of each other looked like a giant sandwich. They found many personal belongings scattered everywhere, from furniture, children's toys to clothing. But strangely, the scene was eerily quiet. Only faint cries for help echoed from the building that hadn't collapsed. While beneath the rubble, almost everything was completely silent. It's likely the incident occurred while most residents were sound asleep.
Through preliminary assessment, the rescue team considered the Champlain Tower South collapse
Could be regarded as one of the most serious building collapses in American history. What puzzled everyone was that all the buildings around Champlain Tower South remained intact and there was no earthquake in this area. At 2 a.m., the urban rescue team began search and rescue operations.
They divided into two groups.
The first group rescued survivors in the building that hadn't collapsed. The second group searched for survivors in the rubble. The western building now looked like it had been cut by a giant knife, forming a large crack. Some apartments near the crack were empty, others still had beds but the people had disappeared. It seemed these residents had been thrown from their bedrooms while still deep in sleep.
The few lucky survivors were standing on high floors waving flashlights for help. Rescue forces used elevators to bring them safely to the ground.
However, the situation of those buried in the rubble was much more serious.
According to estimates, the weight of the rubble reached over 11,000 tons.
The 3 to 4 meter distance between floors was now only a few dozen centimeters. 12 floors along with furniture, people, all piled on top of each other. Every layer of debris could have trapped people.
The rescue team had to divide into multiple small groups, each with about 10 people.
They worked in shifts 24/7 to rescue people one by one.
By around 3 a.m., authorities found the bodies of 4 people,
and a lucky mother and child who survived in the rubble. Combined with those rescued by elevator,
the total number of survivors rose to 35.
But then everything became increasingly difficult. Faint cries for help and knocking sounds from beneath the rubble appeared more and more frequently. But because victims were buried too deep and the debris layers were piled up, access was extremely difficult. Whenever they excavated a new section, they often found body parts instead of living people. On June 25th, then-President Joe Biden declared a state of emergency,
mobilizing additional federal resources to the Surfside area.
On June 27th,
authorities confirmed 9 deaths and 152 missing persons. By June 30th, the death toll had risen to 18 people.
The rescue team
only hope at this point relied on experience from 911 rescue operations.
They believed there might be some survivors in triangular voids created by large debris like refrigerators or building columns. However, when searching these voids, they only found bodies.
What was more frightening was that during the search, the fire department discovered some parts of the rubble had started to catch fire. Possibly some vehicles in the basement had exploded, with flames spreading upward,
threatening the lives of those trapped inside. Since the collapse occurred, hundreds of victims' relatives had gathered at the scene,
hoping them prepare psychologically for the worst news.
The rescue team had to announce that it was very likely only bodies would be found, and in incomplete condition.
At the scene, cries and lamentations echoed across the floor of the sky.
But the tragedy did not stop there. On July 30th, something worse happened. According to weather forecasts, a tropical storm named Elsa might make landfall on the nearby coast soon. Authorities feared that the remaining part of the building would not withstand the storm's wind force and could collapse at any moment.
To ensure safety, the remaining part of the building needed to be demolished.
This meant that the hope of rescuing those still trapped underneath was almost zero. Some survivors had escaped, but personal belongings, even pets, were still inside the West Building. If the building was demolished, everything that belonged to them would disappear forever. Although it was a difficult decision, due to the extreme danger, at exactly 10:30 a.m. on July 4th, authorities were forced to finalize the plan to demolish the building.
This left the victims' families in despair.
On July 7th,
the search efforts shifted to the recovery of bodies. This process lasted for 16 consecutive days.
But the rescue team did not find any additional survivors. The only living creature was a cat that had fallen from the 9th floor, wandering in the rubble. Ultimately, the death toll from the disaster was confirmed to be 98. The Surfside condo collapse became one of the most severe building collapse disasters in U.S. history. So, what happened on that fateful night? What factor could cause that towering building to collapse in just seconds without any warning signs? After the incident, a U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology sent a team of scientists to the scene to investigate the cause. They thoroughly examined the rubble and gathered information from many surviving witnesses. Rodriguez recounted hearing strange booming sounds, lasting about 7 minutes before the room began to crack and the entire building started shaking. In a panic, he ran out of the room to find the stairs to the ground. But when he reached the end of the stairs, Rodriguez discovered that half the hallway had disappeared while he was still dozens of meters above the ground.
Fortunately, in his fear, he remained alert enough to remember the emergency exit. There, he was promptly assisted by rescue workers and luckily survived.
This girl is Triven, who fell from the 9th floor, recalling that horrifying experience. Triven said she was sleeping when she heard a very loud booming sound. At first, she thought someone was doing home repairs, but a few minutes later, she felt the entire room start to shake. In less than 10 seconds, she heard a loud explosion like a fighter jet flying by.
And when she woke up, she had fallen to the ground from the 9th floor.
Kaufman and Serenir, the two individuals featured at the beginning of the video,
also detailed their experiences from that night.
All survivors agreed that before the building collapsed, they heard booming sounds lasting several minutes.
Experts concluded that the cause of the collapse might be a combination of multiple factors,
including foundation degradation, steel reinforcement corrosion, and design issues.
However, the direct triggering cause still requires further investigation.
At the time of the incident, the security camera of a nearby hotel recorded the entire collapse process of the building. Based on witness accounts, combined with this footage and building inspection reports from over the years,
the investigation team ultimately reached a frightening conclusion.
Champlain Tower South collapsed on its own, and many people had known about this risk beforehand. It all started in the 1970s when the Champlain Tower South project officially began construction.
It had a stunning ocean view and even a heated swimming pool. Due to financial issues, the Champlain Tower South project changed construction contractors multiple times.
The building's architect William and designer Sergio had criminal records, particularly related to the stain of construction fraud.
Champlain Tower South was a typical reinforced concrete building, with floors and columns as the main load-bearing elements. Normally, the actual load-bearing capacity of a structure should exceed the design load-bearing capacity. However, except for the west building using 24-inch columns as per the original design,
the size of all other columns in the project was reduced by more than half.
Not only were the columns downsized, but the amount of steel and the number of columns were also halved.
To make the parking area appear more spacious, the distance between columns even reached nearly 10 meters.
Initially, the connection between the garage and the pool deck was designed with a horizontal beam to bear the load. But when drawing out the plans, the designer either forgot or deliberately ignored it, and ultimately the horizontal beam was not constructed.
From the very first day residents moved in, cracks appeared in the weak load-bearing area of the pool deck. But they were hidden by the floor tiles and couldn't be seen from the outside. The weight piled up caused the steel at the connection between the deck and columns to stretch irreversibly.
The entire floor deformed and sagged downward.
Fortunately, the walls surrounding the pool deck created lateral pressure that helped prevent the floor from collapsing completely. At this point, the building was like a house of cards standing in a fragile balance. In the 1980s, building regulations in the US were not as complete as they are today. So the Champlain Towers South project was approved and put into use.
However, according to later Florida regulations, buildings over 40 years old must be re-inspected
for structural safety.
In 2008, the Condominium Association hired an engineer named Frank to evaluate the entire building.
After just 2 days of inspection, Frank felt uneasy. He discovered many cracks in the hollows, eaves, and concrete walls in the basement, pool deck, and ground floor. The machine beam was tilted, walls were abnormally stretched, and even the floor area near the pool had shifted. An even more unbelievable problem lay in the waterproofing layer. Normally, a waterproofing layer should be designed with a slope to ensure rainwater runoff. But the Champlain Tower South construction unit made the waterproofing layer on a flat surface, preventing rainwater from draining. Moreover, Champlain Tower South is located near the sea, affected by seawater infiltration, turning the parking deck almost into a giant sponge. Frank had never seen a building with so many hidden risks. In October 2018, he wrote a comprehensive report on the condition of this building. But since he couldn't determine exactly when the building might collapse, he only mentioned the dangers without directly warning about the possibility of the building collapsing. Repairing this 40-year-old building was a massive project. Not only did the entire roof need reinforcement, but the entire waterproofing layer also needed. Inspection units estimated the repair cost to be at least $9 million. Each household would have to contribute from $50,000 to $150,000. Many residents of Champlain Towers were elderly people aged 70 to 80. Some had just bought homes for over $200,000, so no one wanted to spend such a large amount. Most importantly, the inspection units also didn't clearly warn that if not repaired, the building could collapse. The condominium residents argued fiercely with the inspection company. They believed the inspecting engineer was unqualified and suspected the management board was colluding with the inspection company to extort money from them. In October 2020, the inspection company sent a letter to all residents, announcing they had discovered severe concrete damage near the pool but still didn't mention the risk of collapse. At the same time, the repair cost increased from $9 million to $15 million. At this point, each household would have to contribute from $80,000 to $200,000 US. With such a high price increase, repairs became even more difficult. And finally, the repair decision was postponed until the evening of June 23, 2021. At 12:50 a.m. that night, after a long period under excessive pressure, the steel bars inside the walls began to break. The booming sounds residents heard were the sounds of these steel bars snapping. However, since the steel was inside the concrete, they couldn't determine the source of these sounds. The steel connecting the deck and walls broke first, shattering the fragile balance of the ground floor. At 1:18 a.m., under extreme pressure, the pool deck and basement columns collided violently. The basement columns pierced through the pool deck, causing the entire pool deck to collapse into the basin. After the pool deck collapsed, the remaining part of the building tried to redistribute the load. But due to imbalance, the entire building began shifting sideways and emitted terrifying noises. The beams and columns of the north building were stretched. The gym on the ground floor collapsed first, causing the north building to lose its support and quickly collapse. With no support in the middle, the east-facing building overlooking the sea also collapsed in a short time. Because the west building used steel thicker than 24 inches, it wasn't pulled down along with it. But some residents in the adjacent area were still thrown from their beds and fell from high floors. 12 floors piled on top of each other, creating a horrifying nightmare for the entire United States. The collapse of Champlain Tower South was the third deadliest accidental structural failure in U.S. history. Only after the Hyatt Regency walkway collapse and the Pemberton Mill collapse. The home, considered the safest place, took 98 lives in just a few dozen seconds. Extreme terror left severe psychological trauma for those lucky enough to survive. Many of them cannot sleep at night, fearing the past will repeat itself. Most regrettably, the collapse was not an unexpected event. Many people knew about the building's risks, but the tragedy still occurred. In 2022, Champlain Tower South condo owners received a $1 billion settlement. Most of this money was used to compensate victims' families, with each family receiving about $10 million. The remaining $96 million was divided on the survivors. Following this event, Florida implemented a statewide condominium inspection program. Accordingly, condominium buildings reaching 35 years of age must undergo stricter inspection procedures and be re-inspected every 10 years. Inspection records must be transparently disclosed and shared online with the public. To this day, the pain of the disaster still lingers among the surviving victims. The survivors were indeed very lucky because the incident happened too quickly and suddenly, leaving them no time to react. A country like the United States seems very safe, but there are still hidden corners where life safety issues need to be prioritized. And you, what do you think about the tragedy of Champlain Tower Sound? Please share your thoughts with Conha. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't. And now, Conha bids you farewell and looks forward to seeing you in future content on Conha TV.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.